Welcome to the deep dive. Many of us grew up hearing a very specific story about the U.S. flag's creation, didn't we? It's one of America's most recognizable symbols, absolutely. But its true origins and evolution are far more layered and, frankly, much more fascinating than the popular tale. The story often goes something like this. Betsy Ross, right? The Philadelphia seamstress, allegedly approached by a secret committee, including George Washington himself, back in 1776. And the legend says she suggested 5-pointed stars because they were easier to sew, and boom, the first flag, 13 stars in a circle, 13 stripes. But the question that immediately jumps out, and what our deep dive into the sources revealed, is how much of that story actually holds water? Is the reality maybe even more intriguing?
Oh, it absolutely is. For this deep dive, we've really sifted through historical accounts, official congressional resolutions, even claims for payment to unpack the flag's, well, surprising journey. Our goal here is to give you a shortcut, sort of, to being truly well-informed on this really iconic piece of American history. So let's tackle that Betsy Ross narrative first. What's really striking is the historical skepticism around it. The story, basically as we know it today, didn't even really emerge until nearly a century after the Revolution.
A century, really?
Yeah, it was Betsy Ross's grandson, William Canby. He first presented this account to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in 1870.
1870, wow.
Right, and if you look for evidence from the Revolutionary War era itself, well, there's a distinct lack of concrete proof. We're talking no official documents, no personal letters from Washington or anyone else, no eyewitness accounts from the time proving she designed or even sewed that very first flag.
So the key takeaway is that beloved story is more myth, born way later.
It seems that way. A beautiful story, perhaps, but
Yeah.
likely a myth born almost 100 years after the events supposedly happened.
That's fascinating how historical narratives take shape. So if there's no hard evidence, why do you think this particular story became so popular? It really took hold.
That's a great question. It probably resonated,
Oh,
a powerful symbol of patriotism. And it highlighted the role of women in the Revolution, which was often crucial but frequently uncredited.
right. That makes sense. So while she might have made flags, she was a seamstress, after all.
Exactly. Entirely plausible she made flags during that period.
But there's just no hard proof she designed the first one.
Precisely.
Okay, so if the Betsy Ross story is more legend, where's the real starting point? Was there like an official birth moment for the flag?
There was an official moment.
Yeah.
June 14, 1777.
Yeah.
On that date, the Continental Congress passed the flag resolution. It's pretty famous, it stated, resolved that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation.
A new constellation. I like that phrasing.
It is evocative, isn't it?
Mhm.
But notice, this resolution gave the basic framework, 13 stripes, 13 stars, but crucially, it lacked specifics.
Specifics like.
Like the exact arrangement of the stars. Should they be in a circle, in rows, or the proportions of the flag? None of that was detailed.
Huh. That sounds, well, a bit vague for such an important national symbol.
It was. And that vagueness is actually why early American flags, if you look at illustrations or surviving examples, they vary quite a bit in appearance.
Oh, so no single uniform design right off the bat.
Nope. Which opens up the really crucial question. If the resolution was so general, who else might have been involved in actually making, designing flags during that formative time?
Exactly, because someone had to fill in those details, right? It couldn't have just stayed an idea.
Well, besides Betsy Ross, we know other flag makers existed. There was a Rebecca Young in Philadelphia, for instance, known for sewing military flags.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting, design-wise. Francis Hopkinson.
Francis Hopkinson. The name sounds familiar.
He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence from New Jersey,
Mm.
and he actually submitted a bill to Congress asking for payment
Payment for what?
for designing the U.S. flag.
No kidding. Did he get paid?
Well, that's complicated. But his claim has significant merit. He was deeply involved in designing other official seals and symbols during the Revolution. He worked on the Navy flag design, too. Many historians today actually credit him with the original design concept for the national flag, even though the exact version he submitted isn't crystal clear.
So Hopkinson likely played a major design role, not just Betsy Ross maybe sewing one.
That's what the evidence seems to suggest. It shifts the focus, doesn't it? It shows how these big symbols often have multiple hands shaping them, not just one legendary figure.
That's incredible. So it wasn't just one person's idea. It was a legislative concept, maybe fleshed out by Hopkinson, and then interpreted by various makers.
Pretty much sums it up.
And the flag's story doesn't even stop there, does it? Once it was created, it wasn't like set in stone.
Yeah.
It changed over time. It had a pretty dynamic evolution.
You're absolutely right. It continued to adapt as the nation itself grew. For instance, in 1795, Vermont and Kentucky joined the Union.
Right.
So the flag briefly expanded to 15 stars and 15 stripes.
15 stripes. That must have looked busy.
It probably did. And Congress quickly realized that adding a stripe for every new state would just make the flag enormous and unwieldy.
Yeah, you can see how that wouldn't work long term.
So in 1818, they made a really smart decision. They passed another act.
What did it say?
It fixed the number of stripes back to 13 permanently to honor those original colonies. But it allowed a new star to be added to the blue field for each new state joining the Union.
And that's the system we still use today.
Exactly. That 1818 Act established the principle.
Bringing us right up to the present. 50 stars for 50 states, and those classic 13 stripes still honoring the originals. It's a brilliant solution, really, keeping the history while adapting.
It certainly is. And thinking about those elements, it's fascinating to decode the symbolism packed into the design.
Right, the stars and stripes. We know what they represent generally, but is there more to it?
Well, the stars, yes, represent each state. But remember that phrase, a new constellation. It symbolizes unity, a nation formed from distinct parts, constantly growing.
And the stripes.
The stripes, of course, honor those original 13 colonies that fought for independence. The foundation.
And what about the colors? Did they just pick red, white, and blue because they looked good, or is there official meaning there too?
Oh, there's meaning. Definitely attributed later, though maybe not explicitly by the 1777 Congress. But the generally accepted symbolism is pretty powerful.
Okay, tell me.
Red stands for valor and bravery. White symbolizes purity and innocence. And the blue, the field for the stars, represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice.
Valor, purity, vigilance. Wow. So it's not just a pattern. It's meant to embody national ideals.
Precisely. Every element is intentional, or at least has had meaning layered onto it over time.
Now, I heard there's a really fun, kind of surprising fact about our current 50-star flag, the one we see flying today.
Yes. You might think, okay, after all that history, the 50-star version was probably designed by, some official government committee or a team of vexillologists.
Right, something formal.
Well, you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Get this. The current 50-star flag design originated in 1958. It was designed by a high school student.
A high school student? You're kidding.
Nope. Robert G. Heft. He designed it for a history class project in Lancaster, Ohio. Alaska and Hawaii weren't states yet, but statehood was anticipated.
Wow. How did that happen?
Well, the story goes, and it's a famous one, he initially got a B- for his project.
A B- for the current flag design.
Yep. But Heft was convinced it was a good design. He sent it to his congressman. Somehow it made its way up the chain. And when Alaska and then Hawaii achieved statehood, President Dwight Eisenhower actually selected Heft's design out of thousands submitted.
No way.
Yes. And apparently his teacher then changed his grade to an A.
I bet. That's absolutely wild, getting your grade changed because the president picked your flag design. What an amazing story.
Relatable is it?
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear the invention, the creation of the American flag isn't just one person's story, is it? It's much more this collaborative, evolving narrative over centuries.
Precisely. You have a Congress establishing the basic concept back in 1777. You likely have Francis Hopkinson playing a significant role in the actual initial design aesthetics. And Betsy Ross. Well, she may very well have sewn early flags, contributing her skill, but that famous story of her designing the first one, it's based on oral tradition, not contemporary documents.
Right. But regardless of the exact origins, the debates, the changes, the contributions of maybe known and unknown people, the American flag has undeniably become one of the most recognized symbols on the planet, representing freedom, unity, and the, enduring spirit of the United States.
Absolutely. And maybe as you reflect on all this, here's a final thought to consider. If a symbol as familiar, as seemingly straightforward as the American flag has this much complexity, this much debate and evolution in its origin story, what other common historical narratives, things you think you know inside and out, might hold surprising layers just beneath the surface? What might you discover if you decide to do your own deep dive into something you thought was settled history?